My toxic boss tried to get me fired. He didn't know I was working for the new owner. The projector screen flickered from blue to black, a final mocking goodbye to the $10,000 presentation. Mark, the vice president of sales, slammed his fist on the polished mahogany table. The sound echoed through the silent, tense boardroom. Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. Who is responsible for this? I have the Henderson account on the line, a $50 million deal, and our tech decides to die? Its job is on the line, I swear it. Panic, thick and suffocating, filled the room. Junior associates avoided eye contact, shuffling papers that were now useless. Mark's face was turning a dangerous shade of crimson. He spun around, his eyes scanning the room for a target. They landed on a woman standing quietly by the door, holding a tablet. Elara. You, he barked, pointing a trembling finger. Operations! This is an operational failure. Why wasn't this equipment checked? Why is nothing working? Elara didn't flinch. At 29, she had worked at Sterling Corp for 7 years. Rising to the overlooked role of operations manager, she was the ghost in the machine, the one who made everything run but was never seen. She wore simple, functional clothes. Her hair was tied back and her expression was one of perpetual calm. While Mark postured and yelled, she was already diagnosing the problem. "It's not the projector, Mark," she said, her voice steady and low. "It's a network-wide server failure. The entire 32nd floor is down. It has been notified." "I don't want notifications, I want solutions," he roared. "The Henderson team is in conference room 3, waiting." Just then, the frosted glass door to the boardroom slid open. A woman stepped in, looking slightly lost. She was older, perhaps in her late 50s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She was dressed in a simple but well-tailored gray pantsuit, carrying a plain leather satchel. She looked more like a university professor than a corporate player. Mark gave her a dismissive glance. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone dripping with impatience. "I'm here to see Mr. Sterling," the woman said politely. "I'm a consultant. My name is Evelyn." Mark scoffed. "He's in meetings all day. We're in the middle of a 5-alarm fire here. Elara," he snapped, not even looking at her. "Handle this. Find her a broom closet to sit in or something. I have a company to save." He stormed out of the boardroom, barking orders into his phone. The remaining associates scattered like frightened mice. Elara was left with the consultant, Evelyn, in the silent, darkened room. "I apologize for the chaos," Elara said, turning her full attention to the visitor. "It's been a difficult morning. Can I get you a coffee while you wait? Our main machine is down with the server, but I know where the old-school drip pot is hidden in the break room." Evelyn offered a small, appreciative smile. "That would be wonderful, thank you." Her gaze was intense, analytical. She watched as Elara, without a moment's hesitation, walked over to a service panel hidden behind a decorative plant. Elara opened it, her fingers flying across a series of network cables. She rerouted a connection and with a soft whir, the lights in the boardroom flickered and stabilized. The emergency lighting switched off. "That should at least restore basic power to the floor," Elara explained, closing the panel. "The main server is a bigger issue. Now, about that coffee." She led Evelyn through the maze of cubicles. Employees were huddled together, complaining and frustrated. Phones were dead, computers, gifts were useless, productivity was at zero, yet Elara moved through it all with a quiet purpose. She navigated to a small forgotten kitchen nook, pulled out an old coffee maker, and began preparing a fresh pot. "You seem to be the only person who isn't panicking," Evelyn observed, leaning against the counter. "Panicking doesn't reboot a server," Elara replied simply, measuring out the coffee grounds. "It just wastes oxygen." She poured the water, and the machine gurgled to life, the aroma of coffee slowly filling the small space. She handed a warm mug to Evelyn. "Thank you, Elara," Evelyn said, her eyes fixed on her. It was the first time all morning anyone had used her name with a tone of genuine respect. "You need a place to work," Elara said, her mind already moving to the next task. "The conference rooms are all tied to the central network, so they're useless. But I have a small office. An old one, on the maintenance sub-level. It's on an independent circuit. It has power, a working phone line, and even its own internet connection. It's not glamorous, but it's functional." That sounds perfect, Evelyn replied, as Elara led her down a set of service stairs. Away from the chaos of the main floor, Evelyn watched her. She saw the way Elara checked a pressure gauge on a water pipe as they passed, the way she noticed a flickering emergency light and made a mental note, the way she greeted the janitor by his first name. She saw a woman who didn't just work in the building. She understood its very bones. They arrived at a small, clean, no-frills office. A simple desk, a sturdy chair, a working computer, and a phone. "Here you are," Elara said. "The Wi-Fi password is on the desk. Let me know if you need anything else. I have to go deal with the server now." She was about to leave when Evelyn's voice stopped her. "One more thing, Elara. That deal Mark was shouting about. The Henderson account. Do you know the specifics?" Elara paused. "I do. I prepared the operational logistics and stress test models for it last month. It's a complex integration. If it's not handled perfectly, it could bankrupt their entire Western division within 6 months." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "Is that so? And does Mark know this? I sent him the 40-page risk assessment report 3 weeks ago," Elara said. "I'm not sure he had time to read it." She gave a small professional nod and disappeared up the stairs, leaving Evelyn alone in the quiet, humming office, a thoughtful expression on her face. An hour later, Elara was in the server room, a cold, loud space that was the true heart of the company. She had bypassed the primary system and was painstakingly working on a full diagnostic. The IT team, 2 young men barely out of college, were looking at her like she was performing magic. They knew code. Elara knew the machine itself. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from the landline in the sub-level office. A landline. No one had texted from a landline in 10 years. It was from Evelyn. "Elara, I have an unusual request. I need the full quarterly reports for the Phoenix project from 12 years ago, specifically the initial budget allocation and the final expenditure analysis. Can you help?" Elara frowned. The Phoenix project was a legendary failure, a massive expansion that had cost the company millions before being shut down. All its records were stored on a decommissioned legacy server, a digital graveyard no one had accessed in years. Mark would have laughed and said it was impossible. Elara texted back a simple reply. "Give me 20 minutes." She finished her work in the server room, giving the IT team clear instructions for the final reboot sequence. Then she made her way not to the main archive, but to a locked storage closet at the end of a long, dusty hallway. She unlocked the door, revealing a single, monolithic black server tower from a bygone era of technology. When she returned to Evelyn's temporary office, she was carrying an old, heavy laptop. She plugged it in, connected a series of cables to a port on the wall, and the screen flickered to life with an ancient, pixelated operating system. Evelyn watched, fascinated. "I was told that data was inaccessible." "It's not inaccessible. It's just inconvenient," Elara corrected her gently, her fingers flying across the keyboard typing in lines of code. "The company upgraded its systems 7 years ago, but the migration of the oldest archives was deemed too expensive. They decided it was cheaper to just unplug the old server. I convinced them to let me keep it on a closed, independent network, just in case." "Just in case of what?" Evelyn asked. "Just in case someone needed the truth," Elara said without looking up. Files and folders, unseen for over a decade, appeared on the screen. Elara navigated through them with an expert's precision, her movements economical and sure. She found the Phoenix project files, located the specific reports Evelyn requested, and transferred them to a secure thumb drive. "Here you are," she said, handing the drive to Evelyn. "Initial budget, final expenditure, and I've also included the minutes from the 3 board meetings where they discussed the cost overruns. The context might be useful." Evelyn took the drive, her eyes not on the small piece of plastic, but on Elara. "You are a digital archaeologist." Elara just shrugged. "I believe in knowing where we've been. It's the only way to avoid making the same mistakes." Evelyn leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a more confidential tone. "Tell me, Elara, what mistakes is this company making right now?" The question was a test, a clear and direct test. Elara could have complained about Mark, about being overlooked, about the company's flaws. It was a perfect invitation to gossip. Instead, she paused, considering her answer carefully. We have a culture that rewards visibility over value, she said finally. We celebrate the salesperson who closes the deal, but not the logistics team that makes the delivery possible. We praise the loud voice in the meeting, but ignore the quiet one who did the research. It creates inefficiencies. It demoralizes the people who are the actual foundation of the company. We are top-heavy with people who are good at talking and bottom-heavy with people who are good at doing. Eventually, that imbalance will cause a collapse. She spoke with no bitterness, only the calm certainty of an engineer diagnosing a structural flaw. Evelyn was silent for a long moment. She stared at Elara, and for the first time, Elara felt like someone was seeing her, truly seeing all the way through to the core of who she was. The quiet competence, the fierce intelligence, the unwavering integrity. "Thank you, Elara," Evelyn said, her voice soft but filled with a new weight. "That was a more insightful analysis than I've received from the entire executive board." Before Elara could respond, her phone buzzed again. It was an automated alert. The main server was back online. The crisis was over. "I have to go," Elara said, already turning to leave. "I need to monitor the network stability." As she walked out the door, Evelyn said one more thing, almost to herself. "You see things others don't you, Elara?" The question hung in the air, a premonition of the storm that was about to break. The next day, the office was buzzing. Mark was strutting through the aisles like a conquering hero. He had managed to soothe the Henderson account, promising them the world and blaming the outage on a citywide power surge. He had taken credit for the server restoration, spinning a tale of his decisive leadership in a moment of crisis. Elara's name was never mentioned. She didn't expect it to be, but something had shifted. People were starting to notice the quiet consultant, Evelyn. She was no longer confined to the sub-level office. She was now observing meetings, requesting documents, and speaking with staff at all levels. Her questions were sharp, her intellect undeniable. Mark saw this, and he grew paranoid. He saw Elara speaking with Evelyn by the coffee machine. He saw them in a brief, quiet conversation in the hallway. In his mind, a conspiracy was brewing. He believed Elara was complaining about him, feeding this mysterious consultant negative information. He decided he had to neutralize her. He needed to prove she was incompetent, a liability, and he knew just how to do it. Every Friday, a critical logistics server, the one that managed the shipping schedules for their top-tier clients, underwent a mandatory data backup and maintenance protocol. The protocol had to be initiated manually by the operations manager. It was a law. It was Elara's responsibility. The process required her to send an authorization email to the IT department, who would then begin the 4-hour shutdown at precisely 7 p.m. after the last shipment of the day had been dispatched. On Thursday afternoon, Mark called Elara into his office. "Elara, great news," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I've fast-tracked the final approval for the Henderson deal, but they have a condition. They need a full shipment of their initial product order dispatched tomorrow, no later than 5 p.m. It's a test of our efficiency. A big one. Can you make it happen?" Elara's mind raced. "That's cutting it close with the server maintenance at 7. "Don't worry about the maintenance," Mark said, waving a dismissive hand. "The Henderson deal is worth $50 million. The maintenance can be rescheduled. Just focus on getting that shipment out. I've already promised them it will be done. Don't make me look like a liar." "I'll handle it," Elara said. She trusted process, not promises. She immediately went to her desk and drafted the authorization email for the server maintenance. But instead of writing 7 p.m., she scheduled it for 11 p.m., long after the Henderson shipment would be safely on its way. She saved the email in her drafts, ready to be sent on Friday afternoon. Friday arrived. The office was electric with the pressure of the Henderson deadline. Elara was a whirlwind of quiet efficiency, coordinating with the warehouse, the shipping company, and the client's receiving dock. She triple-checked every detail, ensuring the complex order was perfect. At 4:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the deadline, she received confirmation. The trucks were loaded, the paperwork was signed, and the shipment was officially on its way. A wave of relief washed over her. She had done it. And then her world went dark. Her computer screen went black. The large monitors on the sales floor, displaying real-time logistics, all blinked off. A collective gasp went through the office. Phones started ringing with the frantic, jarring tone of internal system alerts. A red-faced IT technician came sprinting out of the server room. "The logistics server is down! Someone initiated the Friday maintenance protocol. All shipping and receiving is completely frozen." Elara's blood ran cold. That was impossible. The authorization email was still sitting in her drafts folder. She hadn't sent it. Mark stepped out of his office, a look of grave concern on his face. But his eyes, when they met Elara's, held a flicker of triumph. He walked to the center of the floor, his voice booming for all to hear. "What's going on? What happened?" The IT tech, pale and sweating, said, "We received the authorization email from Elara's account at 4:30 p.m. We followed standard procedure and initiated the shutdown." All heads turned to Elara, 100 pairs of eyes, filled with accusation and disbelief. Mark shook his head in feigned disappointment. "Elara," he said, his voice laced with pity, "I told you to focus on the shipment. I told you this was critical." He turned to the rest of the staff. "This is what happens when we get our priorities mixed up. This is a catastrophic, multi-million-dollar error." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Elara stood frozen, the logic of the situation warring with the reality of what was happening. She had been framed. It was a calculated, vicious act of sabotage. In the corner of the room, near the elevators, a figure stood motionless, watching the entire scene unfold. It was Evelyn. Her face was an unreadable mask, but her sharp eyes were fixed solely on Elara, waiting, observing her reaction. The entire office was watching, waiting for her to break. The accusation was a physical blow. For a moment, the air left Elara's lungs. The stares, the whispers, Mark's triumphant smirk. It was a perfectly constructed trap. Her first instinct was a surge of white-hot anger. She wanted to scream that she'd been framed, to point her finger at Mark and expose him for the snake he was. But then, a lifetime of discipline took over. Panic doesn't solve problems. Emotion doesn't restore a server. She took a single deep, centering breath. The chaos around her seemed to slow down, the noise fading into a dull roar, her mind, clear and cold, focused on the only thing that mattered: the problem. "How long until you can abort the maintenance and force a reboot?" she asked the IT tech, her voice cutting through the panic with surgical precision. The young man, startled by her calm, stammered, "The backup protocol is only 10% complete. A hard abort could corrupt the data. It's risky. It could take 2 hours to bring it back online safely." "We don't have 2 hours," Elara stated. "The Henderson shipment is on the road, but the digital handshake with their receiving depot is scheduled for 6 p.m. If our server can't confirm the manifest, they will reject the entire shipment." "We have less than 1 hour." She walked past the stunned crowd, past Mark, and straight toward the server room. The two IT techs followed her like lost ducklings. She didn't look back. She didn't waste a single second defending herself. Her innocence was irrelevant. Success by us the only defense that mattered. Inside the server room, she began issuing quiet, clear commands. "Forget the primary reboot. We're going to bypass it. I need you to power up the secondary failsafe unit. We'll load the last clean snapshot from this morning's backup and run the system from there. It will be a temporary fix, but it will be live." While the techs scrambled to follow her instructions, someone appeared in the doorway of the server room. It was Evelyn. She wasn't looking at the servers, she was looking at Elara. "They say you sent the email," Evelyn said, her voice neutral. Elara didn't look up from the monitor she was configuring. "The facts do not support that conclusion." "Show me," Evelyn said. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Elara paused for a fraction of a second. She trusted data more than she trusted people. She pointed to a spare terminal in the corner. "Log in as a network administrator. The system will grant you temporary credentials." Evelyn surprisingly knew exactly what to do. Her fingers moved over the keyboard with an unexpected familiarity. "Check the Exchange server logs for an email sent from my account between 4 and 5 p.m. Elara instructed, her attention still divided between the crisis and Evelyn. Then, cross-reference the sender's IP address with the workstation active user logs for the same time period. A few keystrokes later, the data appeared on Evelyn's screen. It was stark, simple, and undeniable. The log showed that the authorization email had indeed been sent from Elara's account, but it hadn't been sent from her computer. The IP address, the unique digital fingerprint of the machine that sent it, belonged to the workstation in Mark's corner office. The timestamp was 4:31 p.m. Another log showed that Mark was the only person logged into that workstation at that exact time. The final piece of the puzzle was even more damning. The server log showed that someone had accessed Elara's email drafts folder remotely, using a one-time administrator override code, a code only 2 people in the entire company had access to: the head of IT and Mark, the vice president of sales. He hadn't just sent an email. He had digitally broken into her workspace to steal her work and use it as a weapon against her. Evelyn stared at the screen, her expression unreadable. She had just been handed a loaded gun. Outside the server room, the noise was growing. Mr. Sterling, the CEO, had arrived on the floor, his face a mask of fury. Mark was at his side, weaving a dramatic tale of Elara's negligence. "A complete disregard for protocol," Mark was saying. "I'm afraid her position is untenable. This level of incompetence is a direct threat to the company." Just then, a green light flickered on the main server rack. Elara had done it. The temporary system was online. She stepped out of the server room, her face calm. She looked at the CEO, at the accusing faces of her colleagues, and at Mark, who looked at her with pure, undiluted malice. She held a tablet in her hand. On its screen was the same data Evelyn had just seen, the proof, the digital fingerprint that led directly to Mark's desk. The entire office was silent, watching her. She had the power to destroy Mark's career in a single sentence. She looked from the tablet in her hands to Evelyn, who gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. The choice was hers. The moment had arrived. The air in the office was thick with anticipation. Mr. Sterling, the aging, perpetually flustered CEO, turned to Elara. "Well, what do you have to say for yourself? Mark tells me this is a career-ending mistake." Elara looked at the tablet in her hand, the undeniable proof of Mark's treachery. She opened her mouth to speak, but before a single word could come out, another voice cut through the silence, a voice of calm, absolute authority. "The only career ending today will be his." All eyes turned to the source. Evelyn stepped forward from the back of the crowd. Her demeanor had undergone a breathtaking transformation. The quiet, observant consultant was gone. In her place stood a woman of immense power. Her posture was commanding, her gaze as sharp and cold as a diamond. She radiated an aura of wealth and influence that was unmistakable. Mark laughed, a short, nervous bark. "And who are you exactly? The new intern?" Evelyn's eyes narrowed on him. "I am Evelyn Devereaux. I am the founder and sole managing partner of Devereaux Capital, and for the past 2 weeks, I have been conducting the final due diligence for our acquisition of this company." A shockwave of silence rolled through the office. Jaws literally dropped. Sterling Corp., which had been rumored to be seeking a buyer for months, was being acquired, and this unassuming woman was the one holding the purse strings. Evelyn continued, her voice level and devastating. "The deal is for $500 million. However, the final price is contingent on my assessment of the company's primary asset, its people. And in the last 72 hours, Mr. Vance," she said, her eyes locking onto Mark, "you have shown me everything I need to know about the rot in this company's leadership." Mark's face went white. "Now hold on, I was the one who saved the Henderson account." "You did not," Evelyn interrupted flatly. "You nearly sabotaged it. The Henderson Group is a subsidiary of a company I have owned for 6 years. They were never at risk of pulling the deal. They were, however, under my specific instructions to apply pressure and report back to me on how this office handled a crisis. The trap wasn't for Elara, it was for Mark. The entire scenario had been a test. You failed that test," Evelyn said, her voice dropping, each word a hammer blow. "You failed when you couldn't fix a simple network failure. You failed when you dismissed a key employee while taking credit for her work. You failed when you demonstrated you have no understanding of your own company's logistics. And you failed catastrophically when you chose to sabotage a critical server and frame a subordinate to cover your own insecurity. You are not a leader. You are a liability. She didn't even need to use Alara's evidence. She had dismantled him with her own observations. Evelyn turned her steely gaze to the CEO. Mr. Sterling, this kind of toxic culture where incompetence is promoted and integrity is punished festers from the top down. This acquisition will come with some significant leadership changes. Sterling, looking ashen, could only nod mutely. Evelyn then looked back at Mark, who stood frozen in a state of pure shock. Effective immediately. Your employment is terminated. Your access to all company systems has been revoked. Security is on its way to escort you from the building. Do not touch your computer. As if on cue, two uniformed security guards emerged from the elevator. They moved toward Mark, their expressions impassive. The corporate drama had reached its stunning, brutal climax. The king had been toppled from the board. The entire office watched in stunned silence as Mark, sputtering and defeated, was led away. The crisis was over. The villain was vanquished. A new power was in charge. Evelyn Devereaux surveyed the silent, shocked room. Her eyes scanned the faces of the employees, and finally, they came to rest on Alara. She was still standing in the same spot, tablet in hand, her expression one of quiet disbelief. In the sudden, deafening quiet of the aftermath, Evelyn's voice was clear and direct. Alara, my office, now. Alara followed Evelyn into the grand corner office that just minutes before had belonged to Mr. Sterling. The now former CEO was being quietly spoken to by a man in a sharp suit who had appeared out of nowhere. Evelyn's lawyer, Alara presumed. Evelyn gestured for Alara to sit in one of the plush leather chairs facing the huge mahogany desk. For the first time Alara sat, Evelyn remained standing, looking out the floor-to-ceiling window at the sprawling city below. For 20 years, Evelyn began, her back still to Alara. I have been buying companies, and in all that time I've learned one fundamental truth. You can buy technology, you can buy real estate, you can buy market share, but you cannot buy a soul. The soul of a company is its people, and the soul of this company is broken. She turned around, her eyes meeting Alara's. But it's not dead. It's just been neglected. The foundation is cracked, but it's still here because of people like you. Me, Alara said, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, you, Evelyn confirmed, a small, genuine smile touching her lips. I didn't come here to test the servers, Alara. I came here to find the person who kept them running. I knew this company had operational excellence on paper, but the leadership was a disaster. It didn't add up. There had to be someone in the trenches, someone invisible holding it all together. I just had to create enough chaos to make that person reveal themselves. It all clicked into place for Alara. The convenient server crash, the impossible data request, the Henderson pressure test. It was all a meticulously designed audit, not of systems, but of character. You don't just manage operations, Alara. Evelyn continued, walking closer. You are the operation. You are the institutional knowledge, the quiet competence, and the moral compass this place has been lacking. Mark was terrified of you because he knew, on some subconscious level, that you were more valuable than he could ever be. People like him are terrified of people like you. She stopped directly in front of Alara's chair. I am not just acquiring Sterling Corp. I am gutting it and rebuilding it from the ground up. And I need an architect. I need someone who knows where every wire is, where every skeleton is buried, and more importantly, has the integrity to build something better, something that lasts. Evelyn leaned forward, placing her hands on the arms of Alara's chair. Her voice was firm, filled with purpose. I am dissolving the entire current executive board. I am creating a new position, Vice President of Integration and Operations. This person will oversee the complete overhaul of this company's internal structure. its culture, and its processes. They will have full authority to hire, to fire, and to rebuild this place based on the principles of value over visibility and competence over charisma. They will report directly to me. She held Elara's gaze. I'm offering that job to you, Elara. Elara was speechless. It was an incredible leap, a jump of a half-dozen rungs up the corporate ladder. It was a level of responsibility, of power she had never imagined for herself. She had only ever wanted to do her job well, to be left alone, to make things work. Why me? She finally managed to ask. Because when you had the power to destroy a man who wronged you, you hesitated, Evelyn said. You didn't want revenge, you wanted a solution, because when the world was falling apart, you were the calmest person in the room, and because when I asked you what was wrong with this company, you didn't give me gossip. You gave me a brilliant systemic analysis. You are not a manager, Elara. You are a leader. You just haven't been given the chance to lead. A slow smile spread across Elara's face. It was a smile of understanding, of acceptance, of a future she was suddenly ready to build. I accept, she said, her voice filled with a newfound confidence. 2 weeks later, Elara walked through the newly renovated 32nd floor. The dark wood and intimidating private offices were gone, replaced with an open, collaborative space filled with light. The energy was different. It was hopeful. She walked past her old desk, now empty, and continued toward the large corner office. Her office now. The nameplate on the door didn't say Mark Vance. It said Elara Vance, Vice President. She had decided to keep the last name, to turn a symbol of her oppression into a symbol of her triumph. She sat down at her new desk, not with arrogance, but with a quiet sense of purpose. She was still the same methodical, calm Elara, but now, the ghost in the machine was finally in the driver's seat. If you loved Elara's story of quiet strength and ultimate triumph, hit that like button and subscribe for more corporate dramas. We read all of your comments and they truly inspire us. We'd love to know where you're watching from and how old you are. Drop your city and your age in the comments below. Thanks for watching.